Since the first edition of Stateline aired back in May of 1999, we've traveled tens of thousands of miles together and explored scores of topics of interest to Oklahomans. From the mysteries of pre-Columbian civilizations to the state's present-day religious practices, from Oklahoma's homeless to its little-known state agencies. But as time passes, the only constant is change. And this edition of Stateline re-examines selected topics to bring us up to date on what's happened since then.
For years, the film industry passed over Oklahoma. Even films set in Oklahoma were shot on a California soundstage or someplace else.
You know, people say, well, how come they go to Texas? Why don't they come to Oklahoma? Well, you have nonstop flights into Dallas all day long. You have crew 2 or 3 deep, and you have studios and you have equipment. Oklahoma didn't have any of that. We had nothing.
When the Stateline program, The Real Deal, aired in May of 2000, Hollywood was giving Oklahoma the green light. Big-budget films like Rain Man and Twister proved to producers that the state is film-friendly. To keep the momentum going, lawmakers approved a 15% rebate on shooting expenses for productions with a budget of $2 million or more.
Oklahoma was the first state to have a rebate program, I believe passed in 2001. We never fully funded it. Over the next 3 years, it was funded to roughly $327,000. When I came in as the director of this office, it was depleted. It was sitting on empty in 2004.
And when I first came back here, I worked with the legislature on getting that rebate passed. But we set the limit a little high. It was $2 million per picture, and there are a lot of movies, good movies, that are being made for under $1 million.
In the meantime, New Mexico had taken our plan, gotten the full support of their governor and their legislature, passed a rebate program. They started at 15%, they've gone to 20% and then up to 25%. And in that 5 years, they've gone from doing $20 million a year to $500 million a year in production revenue. We need to get in that race. We need to start somewhere and begin catching up.
This year, the State Film Commission is pushing a plan they feel will bring the show business back. They threw a little barbecue at the Harn homestead near the Capitol to pitch the script to lawmakers.
That translates to an economic impact of $18.9 million. Just in the
We're trying now to get that limit lowered so that we can attract more of the smaller budget movies that can make an impact here in the state and can go on and win an Oscar or go to Sundance Film Festival.
In October, Oklahoma City Community College broke ground on what will be a 6,000 square foot soundstage.
We're training students to be editors. We've got a couple of students we've trained to be script supervisors that are very good at that. We have some good grips and electricians that when we bring in our crews from Hollywood, the trouble is they're so good that they steal them and take them back to Hollywood.
What we want to avoid is an export industry where we're training the crew base and sending them to Los Angeles or New York. We need to be able to have the infrastructure here so they can stay in Oklahoma if they choose to and have careers here in the state, which is great for Oklahoma. If we had even a percentage of the business that New Mexico is doing, you know, that they're doing $500 million a year. Say we had 10% of that. That's $50 million a year, which, you know, you put through the economic multiplier, it goes up to $75 million.
With that kind of money at stake, the Film Commission is calling on homegrown talent and the legislature to create an environment that keeps Oklahoma in the spotlight.
Because it's a wonderful place. It's got all kinds of diversity of terrain and looks, and it's film friendly. It's easy to work here, and everybody's, you know, Oklahoma, we're friendly people here.
Since we brought viewers the hopes and dreams of high school football players, more high school standout Darren Flowers made official campus visits, went to college games, and was heavily recruited. He chose the University of Tulsa, but was injured playing for the Hurricanes, ending his football career. He has found success, though, not on the gridiron, but with acoustic guitar. Darren Flowers is now an accomplished musician and recording artist. But athletics is still in his life. Flowers is an assistant cross-country coach at West Texas A&M.
Just a few years ago, Oklahoma's county jails were in real trouble.
You go in there, it's like a dungeon.
Many were built just after statehood. The dingy little cells were packed with prisoners, people waiting for trial for DUI, locked in with convicted rapists and murderers.
It's old and run down. The walls are crumbling, and like I said, we don't meet state jail standards at all on a lot of things. Just basically the way it's built. We can't visually see all areas of the jail cells during our when we do our 1-hour site checks.
Several jails faced fines and even shutdowns by state and federal authorities. Citizens were reluctant to spend money on what was thought to be comfort for criminals.
I think sheriffs do a wonderful job running jails for the red tape they go through. Sometimes it's not their fault they're not getting money. I observed a sheriff in the last Oklahoma Sheriff's Association meeting stand up and say, "Take it. I don't want it anymore. I can't get the money to run it. Let's take the darn thing."
At the time Stateline aired in October of 2004, LaFleur and Pottawatomie counties were both building multi-million-dollar jails. But Logan County voters had turned down a sales tax proposal to replace their local lockup.
They didn't realize it was that bad, and of course I don't think we didn't actually the first tax. We tried to tell people, but I don't think got it out to the public well enough. The second time around we did. We had numerous public meetings around the county, and I think changed a lot of people's minds on what was needed here.
And in March 2005, a second sales tax initiative passed in Logan County.
It's about a $7 million jail. Of course, went out for a sales tax, 3/4 of a cent for 10 years. We actually started construction about November of last year.
Today, the new Logan County Jail is almost finished, and Sheriff Randy Richardson is eager to show it off.
Prisoners will be unloaded in here, and then we'll enter this door into the bookend area in the jail. Many doors to go through to get out, to get in and out, whereas over there, one cell door and they're out. This you have to go through several different doors to get in and out of the facility. And it's all controlled, everything's controlled electronically from upstairs in the control room.
Not only will there be more room, it will be much safer for both staff and inmates.
That's the day room. They'll spend a lot of time out there in the day room. Of course, there'll be a roof, above the cell area. Basically, these are our 2-man cells, with the exception of the end cell, which is a 4-man cell. The dormitory style are nonviolent offenders. A lot of them are in here for maybe DUI or possession of paraphernalia or things like that that are nonviolent that you don't want to put in with the more violent offenders. And the more violent offenders will be put in the areas with the individual cells.
This jail is designed to last a long time because it may have to.
We did leave room on the east side for expansion to double the bed count.
Today, 8 counties are building new jails. Cherokee and Craig counties have recently opened new jails. In all, 45 counties in Oklahoma have new facilities.
It's scheduled to be turned over to us on November 9th. We're hoping to be in it a little early, but it's scheduled for November 9th. Oh, we're excited. Everybody involved in the Sheriff's Office is excited. We've needed this for a long time.
Since we looked at the world of girls and women's gymnastics in Oklahoma, Edmond's own Shannon Miller is working toward a degree at Boston College School of Law. The 30-year-old also plans to head the newly formed Shannon Miller Foundation, which strives to combat childhood obesity and encourage healthy lifestyles and nutrition. In 2005, Miller was inducted into the U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame. In 2006, she was inducted into the International Gymnastics Hall of Fame and still inspires a new generation of Golden Girls.
For Oklahoma drivers, it's always been a bumpy road. The state has 1,600 bad bridges with crumbling concrete chipped away to the rebar and steel beams so rusted you can see daylight through the holes.
There are certain areas of roads that there do seem to be a higher number of accidents.
That beam, if you get enough of those that are rusted like that, they will collapse under the load.
25% of our roads are critical or inadequate. That means a lot of those roads do not have shoulders on them, two-lane roads without shoulders, no clear zone for a vehicle that would run off the road and driver be able to get it under control.
A vote on a sales tax on gasoline was just around the corner when Stateline looked into the situation in August of 2005. The sales tax would have added 5 cents a gallon to pay for road and bridge repairs. As Election Day neared, prices at the pump were going up, way up, and voters said no by a margin of 2-1. Oddly enough, that turned out to be a good thing.
Oh, I think that may have been one of the best things that ever happened to the state, because the gas and diesel tax, when fully implemented, would have generated about $130 million in additional money to the department. With the 1176 passing, which came on the heels of that, the department will receive, when fully implemented, $277 million. So huge difference. And what my take is that the people said that when we are being taxed enough, we just need to make sure that the taxes that we pay go to where they're needed. The condition of the roads a year and a half ago aren't much different than they are now, but we do have some long-term help on the way.
Today, there are 3 times the number of bridges scheduled to be replaced than before.
Just 4 years ago, in our, at that time, 8-year plan, we had 145 bridges that we would replace. In today's 8-year plan, we have about 480 bridges that we're going to replace over the next 8 years. So it's a huge change.
This year, the program hit a speed bump. A 1.9% growth in the budget was projected, about half of the 3% needed to get the extra funds. Actual collections are $200 million more than that projection, but still fall short of the trigger of 3% growth at 2.9%.
The general fund increased by more than 3%. Then the department would receive $50 million of that additional revenue, and that would be our new baseline to continue forward. If it's less than 3%, then we would receive $17.5 million, and that would be our new baseline. So, in a sense, I don't want to say we lost $32.5 million, but certainly we were disappointed because that $32.5 million would enable us to advance some projects that we have in our program and allow us to put more emphasis on our maintenance program.
Ridley says they've never had the money for a maintenance program before, so they set aside $20 million from the new money to fix new bridges before they get into the condition of the ones they're replacing.
It didn't raise any new taxes. It didn't give us any more debt which is really important. And finally, and probably the most important thing of the bill, was it didn't contain any political projects.
Once the money picks up speed, traffic will be slowing down.
That's progress. It is going to be a problem for the people that commute and use those roads during construction, but the end result will be a much safer facility and a much more user-friendly facility when we get done. So, but yes, they are going to see hopefully more construction zones, because that's what it takes to rebuild the system.
Since we focused on the people of and the state law concerning contaminated Tar Creek, the buyout of homes got underway. But recent EPA reports indicate pollution from the 40-square-mile area in northeastern Oklahoma now affects 3 states and might be polluting Grand Lake. As we reported, decades of lead and zinc mining contaminated the area, which includes the towns of Pitcher, Cardin, and Hockerville. Oklahoma U.S. Senator Jim Inhofe says he will ask Congress for more money to continue with the buyouts and cleanup of Tar Creek.
When Stateline visited the Oklahoma Historical Society in 2005, its home, built in the 1920s, had seen better days.
It was designed in a time before central heat and air. The environmental conditions have been impossible. For 40 years, we've been out of space. We started planning for the Oklahoma History Center in 1998. The legislature and the governor at the time says, tell us what you need.
Right across the street from the state capitol, the new $59 million Answer to a Prayer was constructed and opened its doors in November of 2006. Artifacts, once stored away out of sight, are now on display for everyone to see.
One of the most profound things that the space for the History Center has done is to allow us to do our jobs. It allows us to do the programs, the exhibits, the special activities that we've long wanted to do, but that in the Wiley Post building we simply didn't have the facility or the room to do it.
What was 6,000 feet of exhibit space is now 35,000, and the 2 interactive displays expanded to over 200. When the center was still a blueprint, the director was looking forward to having some breathing room.
The extra space is really not there. We've managed to fill it up very handily, and in fact we're already doing a little bit of shifting internally.
You know, when we first came in here, it was empty. There were no shelves, nothing was in here, and we just were in awe of the size of this place. We thought, well, how wonderful. We'll never have to worry about space again. Wrong. By the time we brought everything over from the old Wiley Post building, and we brought everything over from our warehouse storage facility, we're full again. I had a little space recently and got a call about another collection, and that's filled us up.
The amount of artifacts, the amount of documents, the amount of things being generated and donated and coming to us are continuing to grow and to expand, and that's part of the purpose of the building.
We're going to have to get creative about shelving and storage in here again.
This room filled with boxes is a vault, filled with a treasure trove of film and tape donated from photographers, universities, and Oklahoma television stations.
We have a collection here that spans the entire first century of Oklahoma's existence. You go back to 1907, 1908, we have footage that Benny Kent shot, a film cameraman out of Chandler, Oklahoma, shot at the 101 Ranch, and all over Oklahoma. He shot the 21 Tulsa race riots. He shot inaugurals. We don't have a lot of his footage left, but we have some priceless footage of his. At the end of World War II, the TV stations came along, and we pick up with the Channel 4 collection, and starting in the late 40s, takes us through the early 80s, and then videotape from the 80s on. The first priority is to get it in here and get it protected. You protect the film, you preserve it by doing that. So we get the right temperature, the right humidity, and it's safe. Then the next step is to prioritize the films that are kind of degrading on us, that are in bad shape, that need some professional help. And then in the future, hopefully we put it on some kind of medium where folks can come in and view it, or hopefully get it online or something at some point where people can watch it on their computers at home.
Lining the walls are microfilm copies of the very first thing the Historical Society collected.
The newspaper publishers actually started our organization back in the 1800s by saying, if you're going to tell the history of Oklahoma, you have to have the day-by-day newspaper. I've heard anywhere from 98 to 99% of all newspapers ever published in Oklahoma on microfilm. And people can view those in our research center here at the Oklahoma History Center.
Most of what's here has not been seen since the day it was filmed.
What I see that's significant about the film and then later the tape history of Oklahoma and the world, the 20th century was the first century to have that kind of documentation, where you can actually go back and watch the scenes and see how things were done. And I personally think it's a very significant record of our past, and Oklahoma was just fortunate it became a state during that century. And we have most of it on film.
Since we looked at the newspaper industry in the state, there are a few less printed papers in driveways every morning as more publications have gone online. Now e-publications crop up virtually every day on the World Wide Web. One thing hasn't changed. We introduced you to Marilyn Thurman of Goatee Bow in southwest Oklahoma. She tells us she celebrated her 15th anniversary last year of reporting, writing, editing, and publishing the only paper in town. And the Goatee Bow News is still just a quarter. Now that's good news.
In February of 2006, getting a tattoo in Oklahoma was against the law, but that doesn't mean you couldn't get one.
It scares me that they would put that much effort into fighting against this rather than just letting it happen, because it's not going to stop tattooing.
When Stateline began looking into the issue, pressure was building.
Despite public opinion and poll after poll after poll, there were certain people in the legislature who had power in their committees who could kill these bills. And instead of representing their constituents, they were representing their own morality. They don't want tattoos. They don't want Oklahoma to be a state where we have tattoos. When they were illegal, there was a big push by several shops to open up shop, call attention to themselves.
Seeing as how we're the last state, somebody had to get out there and do it. And it's just one of those things, just right time, right place. My friend helped me out, and we just decided to take it public. Got tired of hiding, really. Want to show people it can be done right. It's a legitimate art form now.
They were getting arrested, they were going to jail. And then we challenged the constitutionality of the ban to the Supreme Court of Criminal Matters in Oklahoma. It was while that challenge was pending that Al Lindley's bill finally, after 7 years, made it out of committee.
The bill was heard, and lawmakers lifted the ban on body art in May of 2006.
I think the legislature begrudgingly legalized tattoos. They didn't want the illegality struck completely and there be no regulations. In other words, we forced their hand. So we forced their hand and they legalized it, but they made it barely legal. They made it as difficult as possible for these shops to operate, and that's unconstitutional.
Amendments attached to the law require that all tattoo shops be at least 1,000 feet from a school, church, or playground, and carry a $100,000 surety bond. But on May the 1st, District Judge Daniel Owens entered a permanent injunction on both requirements.
That type of a setback is needed to prevent disruption of the religious and educational services and family activities in the parks that the statute references. You always have the potential of school-age children coming by and being involved in adult places like this, and it becomes kind of an attraction.
There's no business in Oklahoma that has a 1,000-foot setback except for pedophiles, and they're not a business. So, I mean, essentially, we were in the same category as criminals.
That is actually the thing that aggravated me the most about this, and it told me exactly what the legislature had done and how it was a backhanded way of keeping this illegal. The only place a 1,000-foot setback exists in Oklahoma law is to enhance criminal activity and for registered sex offenders.
There's also the concern that it would draw adult-type situations with people coming into those areas that have had potential effects upon different things like property values and the morals of the society in the area.
The state health department will continue to regulate tattoo parlors, but without the surety bond.
There is no other health-related business that has to have a surety bond. A surety bond is for plumbers, electricians, things of that nature.
Would pay for penalties against the tattoo establishment in case that establishment went out of business and the operators couldn't be found. If the client were to go in, pay all the money up front and get the first part of the tattoo and come back and they're out of business, then he would lose his money.
The problem with that argument was it was undercut by the language of the surety bond itself, which said it did not cover services or failure to render services.
Tattoo artists are elated, but doubt that there will be an overflow of Oklahoma ink.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited for everybody. We have worked so hard for this, and we just wanted a legal business, and we wanted to be able to take care of our families and do what we love.
Just like any other business, everyone should get a chance to open a business, and in the end, consumers will decide which businesses live and which businesses die.
Health department officials are appealing the ruling to the state Supreme Court.
For a VHS or DVD copy of this program, please send a check or money order for $22.95 to the OETA Foundation, Post Office Box 14190, Oklahoma City 73113. Or to place a credit card order, call 800-879-6382 during regular business hours.